Welcome back. Today we're diving into the unsettling world of Inside. If you enjoy dark, story-driven games, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's begin. A boy runs through a dark forest. He wears a simple red shirt that marks him as different, vulnerable, a target in this shadowy world. Behind him, flashlight beams cut through the trees. Men are hunting him. He doesn't know why they want him, only that they do, and that being caught means something worse than death. The forest itself seems complicit in his persecution. Branches clawed his clothes, roots threatened to trip his small feet. Rain falls in sheets, turning the ground to mud that sucks at his shoes with each desperate step. The boy moves with desperate purpose, sliding under fallen logs, leaping over ravines, his small form perfectly suited to the narrow spaces between capture and freedom. The men coordinate their search with practiced efficiency. Their radios crackle with terse communications. They move in patterns, cutting off escape routes, herding him like prey toward predetermined kill zones. They have dogs, massive animals that strain at their leashes, barking with predatory excitement when they catch his scent. They have trucks with spotlights that sweep the darkness, turning night into harsh theatrical exposure. When the boy reaches the forest's edge, he discovers his first glimpse of civilization's corruption. A farmstead spreads before him, but it operates on principles that violate everything farms should represent. No animals graze here, no crops grow for sustenance. Instead, rows of pale, listless people stand in formation, not quite alive, not quite dead. Their eyes are vacant, their movements synchronized, like puppets responding to invisible strings. These are the husks, humans stripped of will, programmed to perform simple tasks. They mill about in pens like livestock, shamble through industrial complexes with the gait of sleepwalkers, their humanity dissolved into obedience. Some wear work clothes, others hospital gowns, suggesting they came from different origins before being reduced to this uniform emptiness. The boy watches one husk standing in the rain, water streaming down its face without triggering any response, no blinking, no seeking shelter, no acknowledgement of discomfort. It simply stands, waiting for instruction that may never come. He approaches cautiously. The husk doesn't react to his presence. The boy pushes it gently, and it stumbles, then rights itself, resuming its standing position. He pushes it toward a pressure plate that needs weight to activate a door. The husk stands on the plate without understanding, without caring, its purpose fulfilled through complete passivity. The boy uses them. He needs them to survive. A husk can hold down a lever while he runs ahead. A husk can be positioned to break his fall from heights that would shatter his small bones. A husk can be led into the path of pursuing guards, creating momentary confusion. They don't resist, don't acknowledge him beyond basic physical interaction. They simply exist in their programmed patterns until redirected. The boy learns quickly. This world runs on control, and the husks are its foundation. Everything, the farms, the facilities, the entire infrastructure exists to manage these empty people and extract utility from their compliance. The forest gives way to farmland to industrial zones, each transition revealing more of the civilization built on submission. The architecture grows increasingly sophisticated as the boy penetrates deeper. Simple barns become processing centers. Dirt paths become paved roads with painted lines. Wooden fences transform into steel barriers topped with warning signs the boy cannot read. The boy infiltrates a massive facility where husks are manufactured, maintained, and deployed. The outer rings handle intake here. New husks arrive in trucks, processed like shipments rather than people. Workers in hazmat suits spray them down with hoses, washing away whatever dirt or decay accumulated during transit. The husks stand motionless during this decontamination, water pooling at their feet. Moving deeper, the boy discovers sorting stations where husks are evaluated and categorized. Some are directed down corridors marked with blue symbols, others down corridors marked with red. The criteria for this separation remain unclear. Perhaps they're sorted by remaining physical capability, perhaps by how recently they were converted, perhaps by purposes the boy cannot fathom. He hides inside a transport container meant for husks, cramming himself among their unresponsive bodies as workers seal the door and load them onto a conveyor system. The darkness is absolute. The husks press against him. their flesh cold and clammy, their breath shallow and rhythmless. The boy fights panic, reminding himself that they cannot hurt him, they lack the initiative, even for accidental harm. The container lurches into motion, carrying them deeper into the facility's heart. Through gaps in the metal, the boy glimpses vast chambers where hundreds of husks stand in precise geometric arrangements. Scientists observe from elevated platforms, occasionally pressing buttons that send groups shambling in new directions. It's choreography on a massive scale, the management of human resources stripped down to their most literal interpretation. In one chilling sequence, the boy witnesses mind control helmets being fitted onto newly processed husks. The devices glow and pulse with sickly yellow light, rewriting whatever remains inside those empty skulls. The husks' heads jerk slightly as the helmets activate, their mouths opening in silent expressions that might be screams, if any, will remain to produce them. Scientists observe through glass windows, making notes, adjusting parameters with the detachment of mechanics' tuning engines. One scientist eats a sandwich while watching a husk convulse under the helmet's influence. Another laughs at something a colleague says, their casual humanity grotesque against the mechanical horror they oversee. This is production at scale, the systematization of human subjugation rendered so routine that it provokes neither passion nor guilt. The boy narrowly avoids becoming product himself. Guards pursue him through assembly lines and testing chambers when he's discovered outside his container. He sprints across conveyor belts, carrying components for the mind control apparatus, circuits and wiring, and those terrible glowing cores. He slides under robotic arms that install the helmets with mechanical precision, each arm calibrated for efficiency, indifferent to whether it processes a husk or a fleeing child. He uses ventilation systems designed for efficiency rather than security, crawling through ducts that carry the facility's stale air. Through grates, he glimpses testing chambers where husks perform simple tasks, stacking blocks, walking preset paths, responding to colored lights. Each test measures their compliance, their usability, their reduction to tools. But he's moving deeper, always deeper. Every escape route leads him further into the facility's core rather than out to freedom. The architecture funnels him like water flowing downhill, each choice presenting only the illusion of agency. It's as if the facility itself is guiding him, as if his flight is part of some larger design he cannot perceive. The facility's lower levels are flooded. The transition comes suddenly, a corridor that slopes downward, water appearing first as puddles, then ankle deep, then consuming everything. The boy hesitates at the threshold, seeing his reflection in dark water that reveals nothing of what lies beneath. He has no choice. Behind him, guards are closing in, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. He takes a breath and plunges into the depths. The nightmare transforms. Down here, the facility's clinical sterility gives way to organic decay. The water is murky, filled with particulate matter that clouds vision beyond a few feet. Lights flicker beneath the surface, emergency systems struggling to fulfill their purpose in an environment they were never meant to illuminate. The boy swims through submerged offices where papers float like jellyfish, their ink running into illegible clouds. He passes through laboratories where equipment sits silent and drowned, their purposes abandoned when the water rose. Fish have found their way into this space, somehow small, pale things that dart away from his movements, having adapted to life in this artificial reef. And then he sees her, the long-haired girl. She moves through the water with predatory grace, her pale form undulating like a ribbon in current. Her hair floats behind her in a dark cloud, giving her the silhouette of something from deep ocean trenches where sunlight has never penetrated. She is neither husk nor human, something the facility created and cannot contain. The first encounter is pure terror. The boy surfaces in an air pocket to catch his breath, and she surges from below, slamming against the platform with enough force to crack concrete. Her hands, if they can be called hands, grasp the edge, pulling her partially from the water. Her face is almost human, but the eyes are too large, too dark, adapted for the depths. Her mouth opens in what might be a scream, or might be simply how she breathes, revealing teeth that were never meant for smiling. The boy flees, diving back into the water and swimming desperately through the next corridor. She pursues him relentlessly through submerged chambers and flooded hallways. He must time his swimming perfectly. his small lungs burning as he searches for the next air pocket. She has no such limitation. She is built for this environment, while he is an intruder barely tolerated by the water itself. He uses underwater machinery to create barriers between himself and this aquatic hunter. A lever releases a gate that crashes down, separating them temporarily. A button activates pumps that create currents too strong for him to swim against, but that disorient her pursuit. She slams against glass walls, her strength sufficient to crack them but not shatter them, not yet. In one chamber, the boy finds himself in a testing pool. Glass walls on 3 sides allow observation from dry corridors. The long-haired girl circles him like a shark, testing the barriers, searching for weakness. And then the boy sees them scientists, still present in the observation corridors, watching through the glass. They're taking measurements, recording data. One points at the girl, then at instruments, discussing her behavior with clinical detachment. They're not trying to save the boy or recapture the girl. They're simply observing, treating this life or death chase as another experiment. The boy realizes she is as much a prisoner as any husk, perhaps more so, because she still possesses will enough to hate her captivity. The husks have been stripped of the capacity for suffering. The girl retains it fully, her every movement expressing rage at confinement, hunger for freedom, and the twisted purpose she was designed to fulfill. The dynamic shifts in a chamber where the girl could easily kill him, but chooses differently. She surfaces near him, close enough that he can see the pores in her strange skin, the way her gills flutter beneath the water's surface. She watches him with those deep eyes, and something passes between them, recognition, perhaps, or simply calculation that he might be useful. The chase becomes cooperation. The girl helps him, though whether through recognition of kinship or simply pursuing her own escape remains ambiguous. In one sequence, a door can only be opened from the dry side, while the switch to raise the water level is underwater. The boy swims down, activates the switch, and the water rises, allowing the girl access to the door mechanism. She tears it open with strength augmented by whatever process created her, revealing passages neither could traverse alone. Together, they navigate sections of the facility that required this unlikely partnership to breach. The boy rides on her back through long underwater passages, his small arms wrapped around her torso, feeling the unnatural musculature beneath her skin work with inhuman efficiency. His lungs scream for air, his vision darkening at the edges. But she knows where the air pockets are, bringing him to surface just before drowning claims him. She breaks through barriers, her hands tearing apart machinery and concrete with equal ease. The scientists watch from safe distances, their creation demonstrating capabilities that simultaneously fulfill and terrify the parameters they designed. Breaking through the facility's lower boundaries, the boy emerges into something impossible, a drowned city. The girl disappears into the depths here, her role in his journey complete, or her courage exhausted by what lies ahead. The boy floats alone in the water, staring at what spreads before him. Skyscrapers stand half submerged, their windows dark, their streets transformed into canals. This is what the facility was built upon, the ruins of the world that came before, a civilization that drowned in its own ambition. The water is clearer here, allowing visibility for dozens of feet in every direction, and what the boy sees defies comprehension. The city appears frozen in time, as though everyone simply vanished midday. Traffic lights still cycle through their colors beneath the water, their programming continuing decades past utility. Neon signs flicker in shop windows, advertising products that have long since dissolved. Cars sit in neat rows along submerged streets, their windows coated with algae, fish nesting in their interiors. The boy swims down what was once a main boulevard. The street signs are still legible, pointing toward districts with names that mean nothing to him: financial center, shopping plaza, old town. He passes a public park where playground equipment stands like sculptures in an aquatic gallery. The swings move gently in the current, creating the illusion that ghost children still play there. Office buildings reveal their secrets through shattered windows. The boy swims into a lobby where the reception desk still holds a vase of flowers, now just stems in murky water. The elevator banks stand with their doors frozen open, revealing shafts that descend into darkness. Directories on the walls list companies by floor accounting firms, law offices, tech startups, all drowned together without discrimination. He ascends through the building, finding air pockets where the architecture creates trapped spaces. In one office, papers are still scattered across desks, as though the workers just stepped out for lunch. A calendar on the wall shows a date from years ago, with meetings and deadlines marked by someone who never returned to fulfill them. The atmospheric detail is overwhelming. Family photos sit on desks, their subjects smiling from behind water-stained glass. Coffee cups remain at workstations, their contents long since merged with the flood. Computer monitors have gone dark, their screens cracked but still attached to keyboards where hands once typed messages that were never sent. In a break room, the boy finds a refrigerator with its door hanging open, small fish darting in and out where people once stored their lunches. A bulletin board displays notices for company parties, charity drives, someone selling a bicycle, the mundane detritus of normal life, preserved in this aquatic tomb. The shopping districts are equally haunting. Store windows display mannequins in fashion that dates the catastrophe. They stand in poses of eternal confidence, modeling clothes that hang in tatters, their plastic faces unmarred by the years underwater. The boy swims through a bookstore where thousands of volumes have merged into papery sludge, the knowledge they contained dissolved into meaningless pulp. A movie theater marquee still advertises films that will never be seen again. The boy swims through the lobby, past a concession stand where candy boxes float like colorful debris, into a screening room where seats face a blank screen that will never again project light and story. But beneath the city's commercial facade lie deeper truths. The boy discovers that not all the buildings were offices and shops. Some were laboratories, some were research facilities. The city wasn't just a place where people lived and worked, it was a place where experiments transcended ethics. He finds installations built into the bedrock itself, facilities that extend down into the earth, far below the city's foundations. These weren't flooded accidentally, they were designed to work underwater, their sealed chambers and pressure doors suggesting they anticipated or even caused the deluge that consumed everything above. In one deep laboratory, the boy swims past tanks that once held test subjects. The tanks are empty now, their glass cracked, whatever they contained long since escaped or died. Control panels still glow with dim emergency power, displaying data that updates automatically despite the absence of anyone to read it. Corridors branch in multiple directions, each leading to specialized research wings. Signs point toward biological integration, neural conditioning, collective intelligence studies. The facility above was merely the current iteration. Down here lie its origins, the initial experiments that evolved into the systematic horror the boy has witnessed. He passes through a chamber filled with early versions of the mind control helmets. These prototypes are cruder, bulkier, their components clearly experimental. Some are attached to skulls that still sit in the chairs where their owners died or transformed. The progression of design is visible each generation, smaller, more efficient, more elegant in its violation of human autonomy. The architecture tells a story of obsession. What began as research, perhaps even well-intentioned research, into consciousness, memory, or neural therapy, metastasized into something monstrous. The scientists weren't content with understanding the mind. They needed to control it. And they weren't content with controlling individuals. They needed to control populations. The boy swims deeper, following corridors that descend at steep angles, passing through airlocks that no longer function, their seals corroded by time and pressure. The water pressure increases, making his ears ache, his chest feel compressed. But he continues, drawn by something he cannot name toward a destination he doesn't understand. The final descent leads to a chamber so vast that the boy cannot see its far walls. The space is partially flooded, allowing him to surface into stale air that tastes of metal and decay. Emergency lights provide dim illumination that creates more shadows than it dispels. And there, in the chamber's center, connected to thousands of cables and monitored by arrays of equipment, still functioning on emergency power, writhes the huddle. The mass is larger than the boy imagined anything living could be. It's an agglomeration of human bodies fused together into a singular entity, arms protruding at impossible angles, torsos merged like melted wax, faces pressed into the surface expressing frozen agonies or vacant acceptance. The whole thing pulses with terrible life, organic and aware, despite its grotesque composition. The boy approaches slowly, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. As he gets closer, details emerge that make the horror more specific. He can see where individual bodies begin and end, can trace the lines where flesh was grafted or grew together. Some of the faces are recent, their features still distinct. Others have been absorbed for so long that they're barely recognizable as human. The cables run from the mass to machinery that hums with constant activity. Some pump fluids into the huddle nutrients, preservatives, perhaps substances that keep it compliant. Others carry electrical signals, monitoring its vital signs, recording its neural activity. The scientists created this, and then they studied it, measuring their success in creating the perfect vessel for control. The chamber's walls are lined with observation stations, though most sit abandoned now. Computer terminals display scrolling data, heart rates, brain activity, chemical compositions. Cameras mounted on articulated arms point at the huddle from every angle, feeding images to recording systems that continue their eternal documentation. The boy sees the purpose behind this monstrosity. The scientists took husks and combined them, seeking to create the ultimate tool, a being with the strength of many, the obedience of slaves, but enough vitality to serve complex purposes. Individual husks were useful for simple tasks, but they were fragile, limited by the capabilities of single human bodies. The huddle was meant to be stronger, more durable, more versatile, but something went wrong. Or perhaps something went right in a way they never intended. The huddle was supposed to be the perfect husk-amplified compliance, magnified utility. Instead, combining so many bodies created emergent properties the scientists didn't predict. The mass of flesh developed awareness that exceeded the sum of its parts. Individual husks were empty vessels, but bringing dozens or hundreds together somehow rekindled consciousness in the collective. The huddle possessed will, not the simple desire of individual survival, but something stranger, a desperate hunger for freedom that their programming could not suppress. It strained against its cables, testing them constantly, searching for weakness. The scientists had to restrain it, had to keep it sedated with chemicals and controlled with electrical shocks, because unbound, it would be unstoppable. The boy sees evidence of failed containment. Deep gouges in the concrete floor show where the huddle reached with its appendages, trying to pull itself free. Broken cables hang from the ceiling, torn away during previous escape attempts that were ultimately subdued. Scorch marks on the flesh itself indicate where electricity was applied to force compliance. The mass notices him. The movement changes character, becoming more focused. Faces within the huddle turn toward him, not all of them, but enough to create the impression of attention. Arms extend from the mass, reaching not with the blind thrashing of pain, but with apparent purpose. The boy understands in this moment that his entire journey led here. The forest, the facility, the drowned city, every step was a path toward this chamber, toward this fusion. He wasn't fleeing toward freedom, he was being guided toward incorporation. There is no fighting this moment, no escape from what comes next. The huddle surges toward him with shocking speed for something so massive. Appendages wrap around his small body with unexpected gentleness, pulling him toward the mass. He doesn't scream, doesn't resist. Some part of him recognizes this as inevitable, even necessary. The flesh parts like a mouth, and the boy disappears into it. The sensation is overwhelming warmth, pressure, 1,000 tactile inputs as he's drawn into the collective. He feels other hearts beating around him, other lungs breathing in patterns that synchronize with his own consciousness, fragments and expand simultaneously. The boundaries of self dissolving into something larger. For a moment, there is pain as his body begins its integration. But then there is something else: connection, belonging, purpose. He is no longer alone, no longer a single vulnerable child fleeing forces beyond his control. He is part of something that cannot be stopped. The chamber erupts with movement. The huddle tears free from its cables and restraints with newfound purpose. The boy's consciousness has merged with the mass, or perhaps the mass has absorbed his will, his determination, his singular drive toward freedom. The distinction no longer matters. What emerges is transformed. Alarms shriek to life as sensors detect the breach. Red emergency lights replace the dim illumination, strobing the chamber in hellish pulses. Automated defenses activate nozzles, descend from the ceiling, spraying chemical agents meant to sedate the huddle. But the timing is wrong, the dosage calibrated for a restrained subject. The airborne sedatives dissipate harmlessly as the huddle surges toward the chamber's exit. The first barrier is a reinforced door designed to contain the mass. It's built from steel, 6 inches thick, with locking mechanisms that could stop a tank. The huddle doesn't slow. It rolls forward with the momentum of its combined mass tons of flesh, moving with singular purpose. The impact sounds like thunder in the enclosed space. The door buckles, its hinges screaming, then tears free from its frame entirely. Beyond lies a corridor lined with observation windows. Scientists and technicians press against the glass, their faces showing shock and terror as the thing they studied breaks loose. The huddle moves with the boy's intelligence guiding its massive strength. It crashes through walls when direct routes are blocked, crushes equipment that might slow its progress, rolls over obstacles with unstoppable momentum. Every barrier that confined the boy, every obstacle that seemed insurmountable to his small form, shatters before this unleashed force. Doors designed to funnel and control individual husks become meaningless when confronted with a mass that simply destroys them. Corridors meant to disorient and trap are straightened by the huddle plowing through their walls, creating direct paths where the architecture intended labyrinths. The facility tries to stop it. Armed guards arrive, their training focused on corralling escaped husks or apprehending intruders. They fire weapons, first non-lethal rounds of rubber and beanbags. Then, when those prove useless, actual bullets. The projectiles sink into the flesh, absorbed by the mass without slowing it. Some stick out like needles in a pincushion, others disappear entirely, lost in the depths of the collective body. The guards scatter as the huddle approaches, their survival instincts overriding their orders. Some are too slow. The mass rolls over them, and their screams are brief before they're incorporated into the collective. New faces appear in the huddle surface, faces with recent memories of being individual, faces still processing their transformation from human to component. Containment doors slam down in its path, each one heavier than the last. These aren't simple barriers, but sophisticated systems with hydraulic reinforcement and blast-resistant composition. The huddle hammers against them with appendages that form and reform, sometimes arm-shaped, sometimes just protrusions of flesh that punch with the force of pile drivers. The doors crack, then splinter, then collapse under repeated assault. The facility attempts fire next. Sprinkler systems activate, but instead of water, they release flammable gel that coats the huddle's surface. Igniters spark, and flames engulf the mass. For a moment, it seems to work. The huddle's movement slows. Faces within the mass contort in agony. But the water from previous sprinkler systems still drips from the ceiling, and the moisture prevents the flames from reaching critical intensity. The huddle rolls through the fire, smothering it with its own bulk, emerging charred but functional. Electricity is deployed through the floors, massive voltage meant to shock the huddle into submission. The mass convulses, its movement becoming spasmodic. But the boy's consciousness, distributed through the collective, adapts. The huddle learns to move on surfaces that aren't electrified, using debris and crushed equipment to create insulating paths. It tears electrical conduits from the walls, severing the power that would stop it. Gas floods the corridors, knockout agents, nerve toxins, experimental compounds designed to incapacitate organic tissue. The huddle holds its collective breath, where the portions capable of breathing do, while the mass of its interior provides protection for the vulnerable outer layers. It pushes through the gas clouds, emerging into clearer air, the toxins affecting only the outermost bodies, while the deeper components remain functional. Throughout the escape, the transformation of the facility is total. The carefully ordered systems of control collapse into chaos. Husks wander aimlessly as their overseers flee, some crushed underfoot by the fleeing huddle, Others simply abandoned to stand in empty corridors, awaiting instructions that will never come. Production lines halt, their machinery grinding to silence without operators. Assembly areas stand empty, half-assembled mind control helmets sitting in frozen progress. The huddle doesn't just escape, it unmakes the facility's purpose through its passage. Every shattered door, every crushed control station, every scientist who flees represents the dissolution of the system. The facility existed to contain, to control, to reduce humanity to utility. The huddle's escape proves the system's fundamental failure. It moves upward, always upward. The boy's memory guides it. He knows which direction leads to the surface, which corridors ascend rather than descend. The huddle crashes through floor after floor, leaving destruction in its wake. Laboratories become wreckage. Storage areas become rubble. Administrative offices are pulverized under its mass. At one point, it passes through a chamber filled with husks, hundreds of them, standing in perfect formation, awaiting orders. The huddle moves among them, and something remarkable happens. The husks begin to follow. They lack the initiative for true rebellion, but they respond to movement, to proximity, to the basic programming that tells them to accompany others. They join the huddle's progress, not integrated into its mass, but following in its wake like debris caught in a current. The procession becomes surreal, the massive huddle rolling and crashing through the facility, followed by a silent crowd of husks shambling in its path. Guards attempting to flank the huddle find themselves blocked by this secondary wave, unable to push through the throng of unresponsive bodies. The facility that seems so omnipotent reveals its fragility when confronted with genuine rebellion. It was designed for control, not defense. Every system assumed compliance, or at least containment. The possibility that something might simply refuse to be stopped was never adequately addressed. The huddle exploits this fundamental flaw, turning the facility's size and complexity against itself. The huddle crashes through a final wall and emerges into open air. The facility was built into a cliff face, and the breach opens onto a steep hillside. For a moment, the mass pauses, the sensory overload of freedom momentarily stunning. Fresh air, real air, fills the huddle's many lungs. Sunlight, actual sunlight, not fluorescent imitation, touches flesh that has known only darkness. Then momentum reasserts itself. The huddle tumbles down the hillside, rolling and bouncing like a boulder freed from confinement. Grass and dirt tear away under its mass. Small trees snap and splinter. The descent is chaotic, uncontrolled, but also glorious, every rotation taking it further from captivity. Scientists and workers emerge from the facility's ruins, watching from a safe distance as their greatest creation escapes. They don't pursue. Some make half-hearted gestures toward communication devices, but none move to actually stop what's happening. Perhaps they cannot. Perhaps they realize the futility. Perhaps some part of them recognizes that this outcome was always inevitable, that their hubris always contained the seeds of this failure. The huddle reaches the shore and plunges into the sea. The transition from land to water is jarring. The mass hits the surface and breaks through, sinking briefly before buoyancy asserts itself. The ocean is different from the flooded facility. It's alive, with movement, with current, with the vast indifference of natural forces that don't care about human purposes. The ocean welcomes it. The salt water stings the huddle's wounds, but it also supports the mass without the strain of gravity. The collective weight that made land travel difficult becomes manageable in the water's embrace. The huddle floats, suspended in an environment that accepts it without judgment. Sunlight filters down from above, illuminating the depths in shades of blue and green. The water is clear here, so different from the murky flood that drowned the city. The boy's consciousness, distributed through the huddle, experiences the ocean through hundreds of eyes, feeling the current against multiple surfaces simultaneously. For the first time since his journey began, there's stillness. The desperate struggle ends. The relentless pursuit stops. The huddle bobs gently on the surface, waves lapping against its flesh, finally beyond reach of those who created it. Fish approach cautiously, curious about this strange new presence in their domain. They dart close, then flee, then return, learning that the massive thing doesn't hunt them. Seabirds circle overhead, their calls carrying on the wind. Nature's commentary on the artificial thing that has joined the natural world. The huddle drifts with the current, moving parallel to the shore. From the cliff face, the facility is visible, a dark scar on the landscape, smoke rising from where the huddle's escape triggered fires or system failures. The building seems smaller from here, less imposing, its power diminished by distance and context. But questions linger in this moment of peace. Is this freedom or merely a larger cage? The ocean is vast, but not infinite. The huddle is liberated, but not transformed. It remains what it was made to be, an amalgamation of controlled flesh now controlling itself. The components that form its mass were individuals once, people with names and histories, reduced to anonymous flesh before being combined into this collective. Does the boy still exist within the huddle, his consciousness distinct? Or has he dissolved into the collective, his identity just another ingredient in the mass? The red shirt is visible somewhere in that mass of bodies, a splash of color against pale flesh, representing the individual swallowed by the collective. The ocean current carries the huddle further from shore. The facility recedes, becoming a dark spot on the horizon, then disappearing entirely behind the curve of the earth. Whatever the huddle is now, wherever it's going, it moves under its own power, free from the cables and chemicals that bound it. The waves rise and fall. The sun tracks across the sky. The huddle floats in its ambiguous liberation, escaped from visible chains, while invisible ones may yet bind it, triumphant in a victory that might be someone else's design, free to drift in an ocean that offers space but not answers. Yet there exists another truth, a hidden layer beneath even these depths. For those who search carefully within the facility, who solve puzzles that require backtracking and exploration beyond the obvious path, a secret room reveals itself. This chamber is different from the others older, somehow with technology that predates the facility's current systems. Here, machines run on their own power, maintaining systems for purposes that remain unclear. Banks of monitors display the facility, the city, perhaps other locations. But the displays show events that already occurred, or perhaps events that never quite happened the way memory suggests. Time seems fluid here, causality uncertain. And in the center of this room sits a single switch, conspicuous in its simplicity. It's just a lever, unadorned, connected to systems that disappear into the walls. There are no labels, no warnings, no indication of what pulling this switch might accomplish. The boy before the huddle, during an exploration that might have occurred or might be occurring in parallel to the escape, finds this room. He stands before the switch, his small hand resting on the lever. Some instinct tells him this is important, that this simple mechanism represents something fundamental. He pulls it. The world changes subtly. The humming that permeated the facility, a sound so constant it became background noise, stops. Monitors flicker and die. Systems that ran continuously for years wind down into silence, and the boy simply collapses, dropping like a puppet with cut strings. His body lies on the floor, unmoving. The rise and fall of breath ceases. The spark that animated him extinguishes without ceremony or drama. He doesn't fade or transform, he simply stops, as thoroughly as a machine whose power has been disconnected. Because perhaps he was never truly alive at all. Perhaps the boy, like everything else in this world, was a product of the facility's control systems. Perhaps his entire journey, the chase through the forest, the infiltration of the facility, the merging with the huddle, even the escape to the ocean, was scripted from the beginning, a program executing its predetermined parameters. The facility did not fail in its control. It succeeded beyond measure, creating a subject so perfectly controlled that it believed itself to be choosing rebellion while executing a program designed by others. The boy's will was not his own. His fear, his determination, his very sense of self, all were illusions created by sophisticated programming, no more real than the emotions displayed by characters in a video game. The huddle's liberation was permitted, perhaps even encouraged, for purposes that remain obscure. Maybe it was a test of the facility's containment systems, a way to identify weaknesses. Maybe it was a demonstration for observers unknown, proof that even the perfect fusion of control could be achieved and then released. Maybe it was simply the next phase of an experiment that extends beyond the facility's walls, into the ocean, and whatever lies beyond. In this interpretation, there is no escape, no freedom, only layers of control nested within each other, like Russian dolls of subjugation. The boy who thought he was fleeing was executing his programming. The huddle that thought it chose liberation was fulfilling its design purpose. Even the discovery of the secret room and the pulling of the switch were predetermined actions, perhaps the true endpoint of the boy's program. The only true liberation comes from disconnection, from shutting down entirely, from choosing non-existence over controlled existence. The boy lying still on the floor, his program terminated, achieves a kind of freedom that escape never could, the freedom of not being, of removing himself from systems that would use him for their inscrutable purposes. The monitors in the secret room display the facility continuing its operations elsewhere. Husks still being processed, scientists still pursuing their experiments. The boy's shutdown affects only himself, a single program terminating, while the larger system continues unaffected. His journey, his struggle, his escape, all were ultimately irrelevant to the facility's true purpose, whatever that might be, unless the shutdown represents something more. Unless disconnecting from the system is itself an act of rebellion that the programming couldn't prevent. Unless the ability to choose non-existence proves the existence of will that the facility sought to eliminate. The room offers no answers, only the humming silence of machines that continue their operations without the boy's presence. The switch sits in its pulled position, its purpose fulfilled or perhaps rendered moot. The boy's body lies still, beyond judgment or comprehension, simultaneously the ultimate victim of control and the only entity that escaped it through the absolute refusal of participation. Conclusion. Inside tells a story without words, painting its narrative through environment and action alone. It is a tale of pursuit and escape, of control systems so pervasive they become the world itself, of the desperate human drive for freedom even when the very concept of self has been compromised. The game presents multiple truths that coexist without reconciliation. The boy in the red shirt runs because running is what remains to him, or because running is what he was programmed to do, the distinction rendered meaningless by the perfection of the control. The huddle breaks free because breaking free is written into its nature, or because its liberation serves purposes it cannot perceive, turning rebellion into just another form of compliance. The facility represents civilization stripped to its essence, the categorization, processing, and utilization of human beings as resources. The husks embody the endpoint of this reduction, humanity distilled to utility and obedience. The scientists and guards represent the banal face of systematic horror, people performing roles within systems they may not fully understand or question. The drowned city suggests that this is not new, that the facility is merely the latest iteration of humanity's drive to control and categorize itself. The experiments in the deep laboratories show the progression from research to obsession to monstrosity, each step justified by the previous one, the destination obscured until arrival makes retreat impossible. The boy runs, the huddle escapes, the screens go dark, and the truth remains suspended between interpretation and understanding, as ambiguous and profound as the depths themselves. This is the horror inside presence. Not jump scares or monster attacks, but the existential dread of discovering that your choices were never yours, that rebellion itself can be programmed, that the deepest prison is the one you cannot see, because it is built from your own sense of self. The ocean's surface reflects the sky, and beneath it, the huddle floats in its ambiguous liberation, free from the facility, but carrying the facility within itself, escaped from visible chains, while invisible ones may yet bind it, triumphant in a victory that might be someone else's design. Or perhaps it has achieved the only freedom possible in a world of absolute control, the freedom to drift, purposeless and undefined, in waters that demand nothing and offer nothing in return. The boy lies still in the secret room, or floats dispersed within the huddle's mass, or perhaps exists in both states simultaneously, superimposed across interpretations that never quite resolve. His red shirt remains the only constant, a splash of color in a world of muted grays, a mark of distinction in a system designed for uniformity, a symbol of individuality that persists even as the individual dissolves. Inside does not answer its own questions. It presents scenarios, offers paths, and leaves judgment to those who experience it. The game ends, but the story continues in the space between understanding and mystery, where the search for freedom confronts the possibility that freedom itself might be another cage, invisible and inescapable, perfect in its deception. That was the story of Inside, a journey through control, escape, and a world where nothing is truly explained. If you enjoyed this full story breakdown, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more narrative-driven content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.